When student loan payments resume, 56% of borrowers say they will have to choose between their debt and buying groceries. And the sad reality is that during this time, right, if they had gotten another income stream or another job or even just at the bare minimum, didn't try to increase their lifestyle and started to put money towards their student loan payments when they were not being forced to pay interest on those student loans, they could have potentially paid it completely off or have whittled it down to where it's very manageable. But like I've seen so many cases where someone has student loan debt, and instead of paying it down, they went and bought a brand new car on debt. It's like now you got like a $600, $700 car payment plus insurance plus maintenance, and your like student loan payment would have been only about like 300, $400, but now it's tacked on with interest. It's like, oh, then you also got the car payment now and the car insurance now. Like you are like just bleeding money at this point now, which is horrendous. So let's check this out. Federal student loan payments are coming back and they're going to wreak havoc on borrowers' budgets. Interest accruals resume in September 1st and payments will be due in October for the first time in over 3 years. But over half of borrowers, 56%, say they will be forced to choose between making their loan payment or covering necessities like rent and groceries. When the pandemic forbearance ends, according to a new survey from Credit Karma, the finding is in line with what the Biden administration and many experts have long feared. Though the brunt of the pandemic is in the rearview mirror and inflation is down from its meteoric rise last year, resuming student loan payments is likely going to hurt millions of households that had found some financial security over the past 3 years. And here's the reality, right? The biggest issue when you pause something like student loans, like when you pause a payment but don't get rid of it, right? But you basically make it seem like it's for sure going to happen because they were basically promising so many people that this was going to happen. People end up getting this like false hope, like, oh, $10,000 is going to go away. But also, was it really even more effed up, even more so about that? They made it sound like people's student loan debt was going to just get wiped, right? Like the messaging behind the whole student loan forgiveness thing is the forgiveness, right? People were tricked into believing that their student loan debt, basically all of it, was going to go away. That's what people were actually believing, right? Even though they had to basically be forced to say like 10K, the damage was already done where people believed that their student loan debt was going to be forgiven. And because of that, you have so many people that made financial choices based off that belief that they wanted to believe, right? So they go into a big car debt with a big car insurance. They go into a home that they can barely afford, then without even including the student loan, right? Because they're under the assumption that they're not going to have to pay on their student loans. And when you think about it, when they haven't had to pay for like nearly 3 years, they almost believe that they're never going to have to pay on it ever again. But obviously, that is not the case. So you have so many people who just believed, oh, I don't got to worry about these student loans, so I'm just going to go live my life and end up getting themselves in a really bad financial spot because now you're potentially losing almost like a quarter of your take home because it has to go straight to student loan payments. And it's like the bare minimum, too, right? Because if people were more financially literate and they chose to like pay down their student loan debt during this whole forbearance thing, they would be in a so much better spot, right? But a lot of people aren't. A lot of people are tricked, and I feel really bad for them. So, cutting back on non essential spending would be the most typical way borrowers would adjust to make their student loan payments according to Credit Karma, but there are only so many expenses you can eliminate. And here's how borrowers are planning to make ends meet, along with some tips on creating more room in tight budgets. And even higher earners will struggle when payments resume. Unsurprisingly, 68% of borrowers with household incomes under 50K say they'll have to choose between keeping up their loan payments and buying necessities, Credit Karma finds. But a large portion of high earners also expect to struggle. 45% of borrowers with household incomes of $100,000 or more say they'll be forced to make those hard choices. And that's because a lot of these high earners have very bad spending habits and they suffer a lot from lifestyle creep. So basically, they were originally at a place where they were making, like under 50K, then they started to make more, and then they started to make more. But the only problem is they didn't keep their spending the same or in the same ratio. They were like, oh, I make 50K, now I'm spending 55K. Oh, I make 80K, now I'm spending 85K. Oh, I make 100K, now I spend $120,000 a year. Like, it's disgusting. Like, they can't like keep that ratio. Like, because pretty much, if you were to keep your spending in like a good ratio, like I think the typical ratio for many people is like 50, 30, 20, right? Like 50% on needs, 30% on wants, and then 20% on like investing. You'd basically live like a pretty okay life. It's just like so many people are basically spending like 70% on needs, like 30% on wants, and then like zero on investing. Like it's horrible. So other debts may be part of the issue. More than 50% of borrowers say they're struggling to pay auto loans, mortgages, credit card balances, or other bills, according to Credit Karma. One option that could especially help lower income borrowers is to apply for an income driven repayment plan. And under the new Saving on a Valuable Education IDR plan, families of three or more who earn $50,000 or less may qualify for a $0 monthly payment, for instance. Still, only 34% of borrowers say they'll apply for an IDR plan to lower their monthly payments, according to Credit Karma, mainly because many of them probably don't even qualify for it, and that plan probably doesn't actually work for many people. Let's see, nearly half of borrowers are expected to go delinquent. That's scary. So, though 72% of borrowers say they will prioritize their student loan payments over other debts, many still expect they won't be able to make payments and could see their loans enter delinquency. In fact, 45% of borrowers expect their loans to go delinquent when the forbearance ends, their survey found. The good news is that it will take a while. The Biden administration has instituted a 12-month on-ramp period that allows borrowers to miss or make late payments on their loans without being considered delinquent or getting reported to credit agencies until the end of September 2024. Still, interest will continue accruing. Borrowers should make every effort to stay on top of all their obligations to avoid more financial turmoil, such as a drop in credit score or bills getting sent to collection agencies. Lord. Like, this is like such a disgusting situation for people to be in. And like, here's the thing, right? If you're someone that is dealing with this or you know someone who is dealing with this, there's a few things that you basically have to do to be able to get through this and not end up in a worse position. One, you have to cut your expenses on pretty much everything that you possibly can, right? If you got to start eating like ramen, rice, and beans, that's what you got to do, right? You got to cut your expenses like a crazy amount. If you are a person who has like a car loan, if that car is technically worth like about half about your yearly income or more, you should sell that car, get a loan for the difference that you probably owe on that car, and pay that off so that you can lower your total like debt from like, let's say that you had like $30,000 in student loans and like a $50,000 car loan. Actually, no, let's just say a $25,000 car loan because you make 50K a year. Well, if you sell the car, but you still got 5K left for debt, okay, so now you traded like $25,000 of debt for like $5,000 in debt. So now in total, you only got about like $35,000 in debt because you got like the $30,000 student loan, $5,000 remaining debt from the car. That's a hell of a lot better than like 55, right? Or 60, I guess. Yeah, no, 55 because it's 30 plus 25, 55. Yeah. So that'd be a lot better, you know? It's just something to think about because the biggest problem when you get a lot of different debts is that all these monthly payments really add up and they're very, very draining. Like if you got like $300 here, $500 there, $300 here, $200 here, $100 there, $200 there, and they're all minimum payments, meaning you're not really actually making traction on all that debt. All that debt is technically increasing over time. You basically end up getting to the point where your minimums, like your minimum payments on all of your debt, will exceed what you bring in per month from your job, right? It will get to that point, which is even way worse because now you're at the point where you're just completely trapped in this vicious cycle of debt that you can't get out of. So you don't want to be putting yourself in that situation. Like do everything you can to cut down expenses, cut down the amount of debt that you have as quick as possible if you could sell stuff, pay off debt, have an emergency fund, and start improving your financial life. And if you got to work another job or do some sort of side hustle or something, that's what you got to do because a lot of people are basically not going to be able to live like remotely a decent human life when this starts picking back up.